costs of owning an apartment don't stop the moment you buy the apartment. It may sound very off-putting for some people, but you have to go on paying every quarter things you might have heard of called strata levies. Strata levies are these regular costs that crop up every quarter. Just like in a home, you'd have your rates to pay and you'd be paying for your gas and electricity and water. Strata levies, it's really a contribution that goes into a fund, and that is used to pay for the expenses, the maintenance, the repairs, the insurance, the utilities, everything that's used by the building as a whole.
A common misconception in the strata world is that when you pay your levies, they're going to your strata manager and they're going straight into your strata manager's pockets. That's definitely not the case. A very small portion of your levies go to pay your strata manager because, of course, they're a contractor that is serving your owner's corporation, but the vast majority of the levies that you pay are going to the other day-to-day expenses for your strata scheme. So those are the typical things that you would expect, like your insurances, your repairs and maintenance, any other service providers that you're using to upkeep, and another big one is the utilities, so your gas, electricity and water usage for the common property as well.
In an apartment, you have to pay for most of the things you'd pay for in a house. You've got to pay for your gas and your electricity, but with insurance it is different because the building is paying for most of your insurance. The only thing you have to pay for is contents insurance, furniture, carpets and things like that. Your built-ins, your bathroom fixtures, the windows, doors, that's all covered by the building.
When you pay your quarterly levies, that it goes into a trust account that's held in the name of the building. Your strata manager or whoever is managing your complex will use those trust funds to meet the commitments of the building. So when the handyman sends in his bill, or when AGL sends in their gas bill for the common property gas usage, that expenditure will be spent from the trust account. Owners have the opportunity to have a say in what their quarterly levies are by showing up to the annual general meeting every year and paying attention during the budget motion, because it's the budget really that determines what the quarterly levies will be every year. So the first step normally will be that the strata manager or the treasurer will sit down and work out, based on what was spent last year and how much money we've got in the bank account, what do we need to raise for the following year. So they'll look at all of the expenditure from last year and determine, based on that and based on what they know about the building, here's what we think we'll need to make sure that all of the expenses are met for the following year. Once that budget has been put together at the annual general meeting each year, all of the owners get to vote on whether to accept the budget that's been proposed. The budget for that strata scheme is made up of two components. One is the administration fund, or the administrative fund. Then you've got your capital works fund.
It's called the capital works fund, but it's really the reserves. It's the reserves for those big things that only happen once every 5 years or 10 years. It's saving up for the painting of the outside of the building or something like that, the big ticket items. So your levies are very much split into two things. Your admin fund levies, which are the running costs for the year, much the same from year to year. And then there's the capital works fund levy, which is tipping in to a savings fund for the future.
So if something goes wrong that's unexpected throughout the year and it's going to cost some additional funds that weren't budgeted, then there's a chance that you might need to pay some additional levies, and those will always be decided at a general meeting of the owners, so you'll know when that's going to happen.
And that's called a special levy. It may be once off, it may actually be spread over several months or a couple of years even, but it does have an end. Special levies have a beginning and an end, and they're for something very specific. In an apartment building, it's probably got small bedsitter type apartments, and it's probably got a couple of penthouses on the roof. And it wouldn't be fair if everybody paid the same. There is a formula there for working out how much the small apartments pay and how much the big penthouses pay. And it's basically worked out on the value of the apartment. That's called a unit entitlement.
So the unit entitlement is something that is determined by a valuer when the building is brand new. The budget is then taken and broken down by unit entitlement to determine what each lot owners' levies will be for the year.
The way it affects you is every time money has to be raised, if your unit entitlement is 10% of the total, then you're going to be paying 10% of the levies. But you also get 10% of the votes at the annual general meeting because you've got skin in the game.
In order to understand the financial position of your strata scheme, there's a few different things that you can do. Definitely have a chat with your strata manager. They'll be able to tell you really easily what kind of shape your building's in financially, and also provide you with some reports as well, and teach you, if you don't already know, how to read those reports and extract the information that you need. One really key piece of information that you want to look for is how much you've got saved in your capital works fund for those longer term projects and your major expenditure that might be coming up over the next few years.
Every strata scheme has a document called a capital works fund plan, telling you what you're going to have to spend for the next 10 years on these big ticket items. And what it'll also tell you is what you should have today if you're going to be able to pay for these things in the future. So you look at what's in the bank and you look at what your capital works fund plan says you should have. And if your what's in the bank doesn't measure up to what your plan says, there's a problem.
So each building will have different levies, and it really depends on so many different factors: the size of the building, the facilities in the building, and a really key part of what will determine what your levies are is how much you're putting aside for the future. So if you have a neighbour that's paying significantly less or significantly more than you are, it doesn't mean that one of you is getting a better deal than the other. It can really come down to the priorities for the scheme and whether or not they're putting aside sufficient amounts of funds for the future to make sure that you're reducing the chance of needing to raise special levies in the future.
When you get your levy notice, it'll have a date on it for payment. And if you don't pay it by that day, you actually get a 30 days grace period. But a month down the track, you will start paying interest on those unpaid levies. 10%, which is very high interest rate, that's what the law says. And then within a few weeks, you will probably get a reminder letter from your strata manager. And what happens next is you get another reminder saying this is going to be handed over to the lawyers or the debt collectors unless you pay within 14 days or something like that.
Another issue if you are late paying your levies is that if there's a meeting held in the meantime, you might not be what we call financial, and therefore your vote won't count at a general meeting. If you're not sure, your strata manager is absolutely the best person to help you out with that and let you know whether you would be considered financial and able to vote at a meeting.
There is no escape from paying levies, that's for sure. What they should be doing is going to their strata manager and say, can I have a payment plan? The strata world is geared up for that. The main thing is to get to people to pay. It's not to chase them with lawyers and debt collectors.